Hello and welcome back to Krush's Kavern. We're here after a little bit of a hiatus around BlizzCon. I was going to get an episode out before I left, but just the stress of getting ready for BlizzCon and trying to get my head around the social aspect was a little too much for me. Didn't get an episode out. And now here we are post BlizzCon. I'm ready to get back on the horse again, get some more podcasts out for you. Now, normally at this point in the show, I'd tell you about my week outside of work, but that's basically going to be the topic of today's show. I'm going to be telling you about how my BlizzCon went and a bit about how I overcame some social anxiety throughout the convention. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, BlizzCon 2019. This was the first year that I've been able to go to BlizzCon. The last couple years I've bought the virtual ticket, caught all the esports, caught all the panels online, and honestly, I'm super happy I was able to go this year. I got the opportunity, came into a little bit of extra money, got some tickets for my wife and myself, and we went down, and it was an amazing, amazing experience. Little recap of what I thought of the content before I get into what I wanted to talk about today. All the announcements thought were great. The Diablo 4 cinematic was just above and beyond, but I can't say enough about the Overwatch cinematic, the WoW cinematic, all that stuff, even the Hearthstone cinematic, as much as I don't really play Hearthstone these days. All of it was amazing, it was well produced, it was well presented, and this was really a fantastic year for it to be my first, especially talking to people who have been ones before. Every BlizzCon is special, but this one had a ton of content. Past the opening announcements, I got to catch esports, StarCraft. I caught the Hearthstone finals, saw a bit of the MDI and the WoW Arena. Didn't catch any Overwatch this year. Maybe I'll catch that another time. I've had a little bit of trouble getting into Overwatch esports in general, but I think they've come a long way since the Overwatch League first started, so I really should give that a chance. Beyond the esports, again, panels, meeting people, all of that was just an awesome experience, and I really hope I get to go again next year. So the convention was awesome. I really hope I get the chance to go again next year. But what I want to talk about today is the social aspect of BlizzCon for me and how things changed from the day that we landed on Wednesday until we finally left the following Monday. So, flight was coming in on Wednesday. We started at fresh at 6 a.m. Wednesday morning, flying from Ottawa, Canada, down to Los Angeles, then a taxi ride from LAX into Anaheim, and we finally got into our hotel sometime in the mid-afternoon, got settled in, took a bit of a rest, and the only thing on the docket that evening was DitchCon. Now, DitchCon was something that I heard about from a couple of podcast communities. I really didn't know what it was about, or anything about it. I just knew it was some sort of community meetup, and I wanted to involve myself in as much as I could, so I got the tickets, which were free. They had a theme going. It was the Villain's Ball. You could come dressed up as a villain of any franchise. It didn't have to be a Blizzard thing. It wasn't so tightly themed. It was just villains of any kind. I didn't dress up myself, but my wife did put on a bit of a Harley Quinn costume. It was really cool. It wasn't just a store-bought buy this and that. She had a whole makeup thing going on. She had this color scheme. It was really, really cool. I've got some pictures of it. But yeah, I didn't really know what I was getting into. And when I got there, I figured out it was basically a club. They had rented out a side room in the Hilton, and they had a DJ going in this small hall, and the music was blasting. Honestly, had a good time. It was more my wife's scene than mine, but we hung out for a little while. Socially, though, I was having a tough time, as you might imagine. Trying to find the nerve to say hi to anybody. A couple of people, complimented my wife's outfit. We chatted for half a second before they moved on. But I was pretty locked into introvert mode. I was focused on where I was standing and how I was standing and how much in the way I was of everybody else. So it was tough. But, we had fun. The costume contest at the end was really entertaining. And in between the times where I was inside DitchCon, we went out to the main Hilton bar area. Now, this is where things went wrong for me. Because I went out there and I recognized more than a couple people. I saw Heroes developers, I saw casters and commentators, I saw streamers out there, and mainly who I knew I was going to want to talk to this weekend was Thist from Lagging Balls and Pat Crane from Convert to Raid. They were over on the left side of the Hilton bar, just talking to friends, just talking to people that came up, talking to people that they came with, and I saw them and I absolutely froze. I was standing there, just, far enough away that they were never going to see me or notice that I was just standing there like an idiot, and very much so on purpose. And my wife standing there like, "Is that someone you recognize?" And I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Well, go talk to them." And I was like, "No, just give me a minute. No, just give me a minute. No, just give me a minute." This went on for about 10 minutes. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't walk over there. I was so scared. And eventually we had to turn around and leave because I just couldn't pull up the will to do it. Turned around and honestly, I was just feeling terrible. I was feeling really bad about myself. Finished out the party. We went back to the hotel and I was just totally in my own head the whole time for the rest of the night. But we did end up getting some sleep and getting ready for the next day. So that was Wednesday, and as disappointed as I was in myself, I was really looking forward to Thursday, because Thursday was Con Before the Storm, and Con Before the Storm had scheduled meetups. That meant I didn't have to summon up the courage to walk up to someone doing whatever they happen to be doing that time and saying hi. There was going to be a time and a place where people were ready to meet folks like me, and I was counting on that. And I was going to be able to work through it and go up and say hi to people. And I did end up doing it, but it wasn't quite as smooth as I was hoping. So the day started out as I expected. We went and got our tickets. We went and checked out the BlizzCon grounds outside the convention center. Very, very cool. We ended up going to the gear store that day. Picked up all of our swag that we now have at home. Really excited to have all of that. But later that night, that's when Con Before the Storm started. And for me, that started with World of Podcasts. As you might imagine, I'm a bit of a podcast fan. So the opening panel, which was the General Blizzard panel, had a lot of people that I listened to all the time. Namely, Garrett was up there from all the things at A-Move TV. J.R. Cook has been doing Blizzard stuff forever, but I actually know him through the Yo Dota Underlords podcast. Thist was on the panel from Lagging Balls. Taryn Gregory, the head of all of the cinematics at Blizzard, was on the panel. And he's apparently a huge community member for just everything that we're doing out here, and that was super cool. Loved the panel, stayed through the whole thing, and it was finally time to go and say hi to somebody. Now, it was still in my head how I had behaved the day before, which was being totally frozen and worthless, but my wife was there. She helped me out, saying, I'll be there behind you. Just go and say hi to somebody. Just go up there. So I sidled up there like a crab, moving sideways, trying not to draw too much attention to myself. And finally, I got close enough that Garrett noticed my Into the Nexus t-shirt, which I was banking on. And he turned around and said hi, gave me a big high five. I mentioned who I was, and he recognized me because I've emailed the show a few times. I'm on the Discord. We've played some games together. And it was really nice that he recognized me like that. Because I am involved in a lot of different communities, but there's a lot of people involved in a lot of different communities, and I didn't expect to be known as much as I was, because it wasn't just Garrett in the end, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But I talked with Garrett for a second. Obviously, he was a busy guy, a lot of people trying to say hi, so we talked for a quick moment, let him move on there, And I got a quick word in with J.R. Cook. We talked a bit about Dota Underlords. We talked a bit about, oddly enough, Blizzard's entry or possible lack of entry into the auto chess field, which we didn't have the Hearthstone announcement at that time, so that was a bit serendipitous. But that was awesome. I didn't get to meet anyone else from the panel at that time, but it was time for me to go over to the Con Before the Storm meetups. Now, the big one that I was interested in going and seeing, and honestly the only one where I really knew a lot of the people, was the Heroes Hearth meetup. Now, if you don't know, Heroes Hearth is an organization that they previously had a team in the HGC. They've got a website for a lot of Heroes content. Right now, they've got a Twitch stream that does Heroes content along with other games. But they're a group of streamers. They're an organization that produces a lot of content. And I wanted to meet a whole bunch of them. So the first person I ended up meeting was Workhorse. The, I guess, president is what you would call him, but he started Heroes Hearth. But it wasn't as simple as me just walking up and saying hi once again. So the meetup was scheduled, I believe, for 7 p.m. start. And so I was over there about 5 minutes before, looking around, and I saw all of them there. But they were all sort of talking to each other. Because it was before they started. It was, 5 minutes ahead of time. It's like, okay, I don't want to just bust up there like their time to start is 7, right? They're all kind of standing in front, just talking and catching up with each other. I'm like, I'm not going to barge into the middle of that. This is probably the first time they've seen each other all convention. So I stood there and I waited and I rationalized for probably a good 15 minutes before I finally worked up the nerve and relented and went up and tried to talk to somebody. And once again, I didn't actually initiate the conversation. Workhorse sort of saw me standing there awkwardly, being the gigantic man that I am, and said hi first. And again, I very much appreciate that because I was having a real tough time working up the nerve. But he said hi. I mentioned who I was, that I enjoyed his content. He said, that's great. We got a quick picture. I was talking to some of the folks that he was talking to there. And then I turned and it's time to meet Jules Scott. Now, Jules has been podcasting for quite a long time. I followed her work with Torrent Think Tank for years and years before that podcast ended. And then we now have the Jules and Coffee Hour, which is another excellent podcast that I follow. I saw her and I said hi and I said who I was, and she immediately knew who I was again. And I was like, wow. I feel like I'm just a guy who hangs out in Discords, and occasionally I'll send an email into a podcast and hang out in Twitch streams. But in my head, I'm like, yeah, a lot of people do that. There's no way they're keeping track of all these people, right? But they knew me. And she asked about, how I was doing. She asked about this show, actually, because I had posted in a few places in Discords that she's a part of that, starting a podcast and things like that. And she was really cool about it. And she gave me some words of encouragement, keep going, keep at it. And it was really nice. I enjoyed meeting her very much. After I was done talking to Jules, I moved down the line a little bit. I met Kai Berries. She's a Heroes streamer, has been doing it for quite a long time, creating Heroes content. So we got to check in with her a little bit. I got to see Tim and Nicole from Heroes of Fitness. They also recognized me from chat. I really do like hanging out in their stream. So that one was a little bit more understandable because I kind of make my presence known a little bit more in the Heroes of Fitness chat than others. But we had a great talk. We talked about, Heroes. We talked about the convention, what they were looking forward to, and the announcements and stuff, because all of this was the Thursday before BlizzCon. They were excited about the StarCraft finals just like I was, so that was really nice to meet them. And I actually got to see them a few more times before BlizzCon was over. That was really cool. And the final person that I met at that section was Coffee Club TV. He does a different sort of stream. He's really focused on production value and energy levels, things like that. things that I really admire when someone's putting that sort of work into their product. And he was amazing. He recognized me too. Well, recognized me. He knew my name from chat. We had to talk for a while. He was talking about this and that. He was just a great conversationalist. Really nice. Can't say enough nice things about coffee. So that was the Heroes Hearth meetup. And as tough as it was for me to finally get in there, I'm really glad that I went. I worked through the nerves. I got to meet people, and I didn't have one single bad experience. Everyone was nice. Everyone was welcoming. And I'm really appreciative of that. After the Heroes Hearth meetup, there was one more panel that I wanted to catch, which was the Battle for Azeroth panel at World of Podcasts, hosted by Pat Crane. So I was up there watching the panel, and as I looked around the room, there were a few more people I recognized that I did end up meeting. I saw Jin from Morally Grey and Ali from Dungeon Fables. I did manage to catch up with Frasley. Frasley is the person that I had a ticket to give to. I ran a little bit of a ticket giveaway. I ended up with one extra ticket from someone who couldn't go, and I managed to find Frasley to give it to. And we met up during the panel. He was on the go, man. But we talked for a little bit. I gave him his wristband and his name badge, and he had to rush off because he had a million people to meet. If you want to follow Frasley on Twitter, he's got a ton of pictures up from all the people he ended up meeting from the community. So glad that he got to be able to come to the show. That was awesome. Really good to catch up with Frasley. I ended up seeing him again on Saturday, but I only saw him briefly on the Thursday before he had to run off and get the rest of his night going. And so after the panel, I finally saw Thist and Pat together. And it was honestly just a replay of Wednesday. Me standing off to the side, trying to find some sort of way to screw up the nerve to go over and say hi. Another 10 minutes of me standing there like an idiot. Just out of the way enough that they wouldn't notice me, because God forbid they notice me. And after a while, I finally said, you know what, it's now or never, walked over, said hi to Thist. We talked for a little bit. We caught up on, because she's from the Ottawa area as well. So we talked a little bit about, our hometown, this and that, a little bit on how we're doing lately. And at the time, I also met a guy named Lance Blizz Gamer. Now, he's a part of the Lagging Balls podcast community as well, and he's also a Blizzard employee. So we got to talking for a little bit. And the first thing he sort of noticed is I was wearing an Alliance hat that I had got from the gear store. And he said, so you're a big Alliance player? And I was like, yeah. He's like, that's just not just a hat, right? Like, you're a big Alliance guy? And I was like, yeah, I play pretty much Dwarves only, but I've been playing Alliance for, how long has it been? About 12 years now. It's been all Alliance all the time. And he was like, you know what? I've got this set of coins. It's a limited edition thing. I think I've got it around here somewhere, but it's just sort of collecting dust with my stuff. Maybe this is something you'd appreciate. And at the time, I was kind of like, oh, that'd be cool. Not really thinking that it was something that was going to come around. It was sort of, I kind of have this thing. I was thinking maybe it's back at the office. Maybe it's at his house or something. But, it was a nice gesture, but I wasn't really expecting anything to come of it. But after I had said hi to Thist and Lance and Pat, which was, the thing that I'd been dreading since Wednesday, but I did it. I said hi to them, and it was nice. They were nice, just like everybody else, despite my brain telling me that, just don't be in the way, just don't be in the way, just don't be in the way. And I went and did it, and everything was okay, despite my silly brain. But I went back into Con Before the Storm. There was just this giant area, walking around, seeing all the art, seeing all the vendors and booths. And then Lance found me again. We were still sort of touring around. I saw him and I waved. And he pulled out the set of coins. He said, "Well, I found them. Here you go." And I was just sort of dumbstruck. I was like, wow. Someone I just met. Someone that, we had talked in passing in Discord a couple times, seen each other's messages. He thought I was a good person to give this to. And that was really touching for me. That someone who honestly probably barely knew me, someone I barely knew, went and made such a nice gesture towards me, was really sort of a turning point for me socially at BlizzCon. And it really stood out in my mind that, you know what? If this sort of thing can happen, I shouldn't be scared. I shouldn't be terrified that I'm making some sort of social faux pas just by saying hi to somebody. I shouldn't be worried about, maybe butting into a conversation for a quick moment just to say hi to somebody. This is really a community that's nice, that's welcoming, that's warm, that's really all about meeting people and forming friendships and relationships. And from that point on, throughout the rest of the convention, I found it much, much easier to see someone and say something, say hi, give a quick wave, just not be all up in my head about the social aspect of it. And it was really a magical experience. It seems kind of corny to say it that way, but the way I am socially, the way that I overthink everything when it comes to social interaction, that moment was a major turning point for me. And I'm still thinking about it now. Over a week later, I'm still thinking about that moment, and it really was special. The next day was Friday, the first day of BlizzCon, and that wasn't really a socially challenging day just because of how jam-packed our schedule was with just trying to get around and see everything that BlizzCon had to offer. We got up in the morning, went straight out to the lines, which honestly were not that bad. I had heard some horror stories last year about security lines taking forever, people tearing through bags, people being rude, and aside from walking through a quick protest, which, everyone was very civil, they were just out there putting their message out, no issues there at all. We barely broke stride going through security. We walked up, bags were already open, put the phone and the wallet in the bowl, walk through the metal detector, get your stuff back, beep your wristband, and we were in. Easy peasy. Now, maybe it was a little tougher for the people who were there, like first thing. We ended up going in maybe half an hour before opening ceremony started. We got a spot in the arena. We weren't going to try to go to the mythic stage. We would have had to be there probably at least 3 hours ahead of time if we wanted a seat over there. But the stadium was incredible. We caught all of the cinematics on the big screen with the stadium sound. Totally blew my mind. But for the rest of the day, we were running around between panels, between esports, and I think I might have waved at a couple of people, but we barely had time to stop and talk because there was so much to see. And even by the end of the night, we ended up choosing to stay. Well, I say we, like my wife had a big, want to go see the StarCraft finals, but she wanted to stay with me. She was interested in seeing it. I really wanted to go see the StarCraft finals, so that was most of my evening. And the games ended up going pretty late. And by the time we got out of there, most of the people that I would have possibly met up with were checking in for the night because it was such a crazy day. So there were a couple people I tried to text. I'm sure they were, off doing their own thing. Couldn't get a hold of anybody, so we ended up turning in for the night. And that was Friday. Not so much of a social challenge, but definitely a challenge on energy, just to try to get around and do everything that we wanted to do. So now it's Saturday, the final day of BlizzCon proper, and there's not as much stuff that I wanted to see that day. Friday was such a jam-packed day. Everything was happening at once. I ended up actually missing a couple things that I wanted to see more of. But Saturday, there were a few panels that I wanted to see, and I definitely wanted to catch the Hearthstone finals, which I did. But there was less official BlizzCon stuff to do, but there ended up being more community meetup things that I did. So the first one was an afternoon meetup in the Blizzard Arcade, sponsored by Heroes Hype, which is another Heroes of the Storm organization that right now I believe is running the only structured Heroes of the Storm leagues remaining. They met up, they just did a general Heroes community meetup around, I think it was around 2 o'clock. But I went down there just to see who was going to be there. I ended up seeing Trixler, I ended up seeing the Heroes of Fitness folks again, all sorts of different personalities from around the Heroes community. And the idea was we got a big group picture, and then we went into the demos. And we formed teams, played against each other. I ended up talking to a few folks in line, which, if it was Wednesday or Thursday, I would never have done. I probably wouldn't even have gone to this thing, or at the very least, I wouldn't have gone into the demo lines, because that would have been a little too much for me at the start. But based on how well everything had gone on Thursday and on Friday, I screwed up the courage. It was still a bit of an anxious experience, but I got in there. We had some fun. I talked to some people in line. I talked to a few content creators. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I went in there and did that. So after that, the final panel I wanted to see for BlizzCon was the Carbot Animations panel, which is totally amazing. If you have the chance to check it out via the virtual ticket or by some other method, do it. It's an amazing show. We had a great time. But after that, there was a person that was dying to meet up with me. I was trying to meet up with them on Friday night, but StarCraft let out so late that we ended up not getting together. But Thy Other Side, who is a Twitch streamer of a number of things, but mostly I know him through Trixler's Discord and Trixler's Twitch chat, was messaging me on Twitter saying, we've got to meet up. And I was like, yes, we're going to do it. We missed yesterday, but we're going to do it today. After the Carbot panel, we went back, we got some food, we dropped off all of our stuff at the hotel. My wife, who was a total trooper through these last 3 days, I let her get some rest instead of dragging her out to another crazy party. So she stayed back, and honestly, to her credit, she was ready to go out again, but I could tell she was feeling it. She was tired. She was ready to just have a nice, relaxing evening. So I said, okay, you stay here. I'm going to head out to the Marriott. I'm going to meet up with Thy Other Side. So I went out there. We talked. We were one-on-one for a little while. We were talking about streaming in general. We talked about TwitchCon, talked about Heroes, anything that came to mind. And we ended up meeting another person from Trixler's Discord, Lord WrathX, and we were the trio for most of the night. We went around, we were saying hi to people that we recognized, we were getting drinks, we hung out with Trixler for a while, we hung out with Coffee Club TV for a while and his wife Emma. I met Bahamut Gaming from Heroes Hype, got a drink together, and in general, I think, how long were we there? I think we were in the Marriott together for a good 6 hours, which is not my usual scene at all. Like, it was just a crazy packed hotel lobby. They were serving drinks from multiple stations. Everyone was just milling together and talking. They didn't have the blasting music like they do over at the Hilton. It was just a din, an absolute crazy town of people. But once again, everyone's super nice, everyone's super welcoming, and I was finally socially equipped to actually enjoy the experience rather than just wondering how much of a weirdo I'm being right now, wondering if I can actually go and say hi to that person, We ended up talking to so many different people I would never have dreamed of walking up to without the experience that I'd had so far at BlizzCon. And that sort of evolution from that Wednesday that we landed to that final big Saturday night party, all the steps in between were necessary to get me from one spot to the other. Because looking back on it now, I think this experience is going to help me out, not just for the next BlizzCon, and it will help me out for the next BlizzCon, but in just being myself in general, and understanding that going and saying hi to a person, going and having a quick conversation isn't an inconvenience. It's a welcome thing for the vast majority of us. Now, of course, there's going to be some people out there who are just not about it, but those weren't people that you wanted to interact with anyway, right? I can't even articulate just how formative I feel like this BlizzCon was for me on a social level. And I hope I can take this confidence, this knowledge, and this general social good feeling forward with me and interact even more in my Discord communities and my podcast communities, streamer communities, and just not be afraid to be myself and to talk to people I want to talk to. Because it was proven to me time and time again that no, I'm not a bother. No, I'm not intruding. People want to connect with each other. And I'm really excited for what this next year is going to bring for me. Thanks for listening today. If you want to contact the show, you can tweet at Krush's Kavern, or you can send an email to thekrushinator@gmail.com. To see the rest of what I'm up to, you can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Instagram, all at the Krushinator. To see everything I do gathered all in one place, join me on Discord at tinyurl.com/Krushination. Intro and outro music for this podcast was created by Leviathan. Thanks for being here, and I'll talk to you again soon.